The Galactic Empire's high command chamber buzzed with self-congratulation. Another species had bowed to imperial rule, its homeworld now just another mining colony. Admiral Valeth raised a glass of shimmering blue Keshan wine, his 4 eyes gleaming with triumph. "To the unbroken might of the Empire," he declared. The officers echoed him, their voices dripping with arrogance. One of the junior tacticians hesitated. "Admiral, Scout Unit Sigma 9 reports an anomaly near the Sol system. Energy signatures inconsistent with known human vessels." Valeth scoffed. "Human vessels? You mean those rusting fission-powered coffins?" The room erupted in laughter. "Ignore it. Sensor ghosts. If those apes somehow managed to cobble together a warp drive, they'd still be centuries behind us." The scout's report was archived, unread. Decades earlier, first contact had been a humiliation for humanity. The Empire's emissaries arrived in their gleaming dreadnoughts, surveyed Earth's fractured nations, and laughed. They declared humanity a protectorate species, too weak to be a threat, too primitive to be worth conquering outright. The Imperial Governor assigned to Sol, a bored bureaucrat named Zurich, dismissed Earth's pleas for technology sharing. "Your kind is better suited to farming and manual labor," he sneered. Humanity was given strict quotas: food, minerals, slaves, in exchange for protection. The Empire didn't even bother stripping their shipyards. What could apes with fission reactors do? The smuggler's ship Voidrunner danced through the asteroid belt, its hull patched with scavenged plating. Imperial patrols rarely bothered with this sector. Why waste fuel chasing rats? But today, the Stormclaw, a mid-tier frigate, locked onto the Voidrunner out of sheer boredom. "Human vessel, cut engines and prepare for boarding," the Imperial comms officer demanded. The Voidrunner didn't obey. Instead, it pivoted on an axis no Imperial ship could match, its thrusters flaring in a pattern that defied physics. The Stormclaw's targeting systems glitched, struggling to keep up. Captain Dravik of the Stormclaw snarled, "Fire a warning shot." The plasma burst missed, not because of poor aim, but because the Voidrunner wasn't where it should have been. It accelerated at 30 gs, a suicide maneuver for any organic crew. Yet the ship didn't tear apart. Then it vanished. Not into warp. Not into stealth. It simply wasn't there anymore. Dravik's voice shook as he opened a channel to command. "Something's wrong. That wasn't a human ship." Deep in the asteroid belt, the Voidrunner docked with a hidden station. Its pilot, a grizzled ex-engineer named Rivas, transmitted a single coded burst. "Phase 1 complete." The station's AI acknowledged. Across the Sol system, dormant shipyards hummed to life. The Empire's arrogance had blinded them. They never considered that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology, it was patience. And patience had just run out. The Imperial patrol logs flagged the anomaly as a sensor malfunction. Ghost signals flickered at the edge of Sol's gravity well, phantom contacts that appeared and vanished before targeting systems could lock. Admiral Valeth dismissed the reports with a wave of his hand. "Cosmic interference," he declared. "Or human garbage cluttering the void." But the anomalies grew bolder. A mining outpost on Ceres stopped transmitting. Routine check-ins from Titan's tribute fleet ceased. When an Imperial envoy was sent to investigate, they found empty docks and deactivated comm arrays. No signs of struggle. No wreckage. Just silence. High Command's irritation turned to unease. The Iron Fist, a mid-class cruiser, was dispatched to intercept a drifting human freighter near Mars. Its captain, Corvith, expected a simple salvage operation, perhaps a reactor failure, another example of human incompetence. The freighter's transponder identified it as the Grain's Blessing, a bulk hauler registered to Earth's agricultural consortium. Its hull was pitted with micrometeorite scars, its engines cold. Standard boarding protocols were initiated. Then the Blessing's exterior panels slid open. Hidden beneath the rusted plating were rows of magnetic accelerators, their barrels humming with charged particles. The Iron Fist's shield alarms blared a millisecond before the freighter's railguns fired. Corvith had just enough time to scream, "Ambush!" before the bridge consoles exploded. The Iron Fist's distress signal reached the nearest relay station, but the response fleet arrived too late. They found the cruiser adrift, its weapons disabled, its crew alive but imprisoned in their own brig. The humans had left no bodies, no debris, only a single message looping on the Iron Fist's main screen. "You underestimated us." The boarding party's report sent ripples through high command. The Iron Fist's internal logs showed the engagement had lasted less than 40 seconds. Its shields had been overloaded by projectile velocities the Empire's engineers insisted were impossible without gravity drive tech. And the freighter's reactor signature? Clean. No radiation spikes. No fusion traces. Just a steady, impossible output that matched nothing in Imperial databases. Panic spread through the Empire's ranks. Scout drones were deployed in waves, sweeping the outer system for hidden shipyards or weapon platforms. They found nothing. But the phantom contacts continued, fleeting, untraceable, always one step ahead. Then, near Pluto's orbit, a deep-range observatory picked up a massive energy surge. The Empire's tactical AI processed the data, cross-referenced it, and for the first time in its operational history, flagged the result with a priority override. Classified threat level Omega. The Admiralty's secure channel erupted with voices. "Those aren't freighters. No human design matches. Where did they get that tech?" A single image dominated the holo-display, a formation of sleek, angular warships, their hulls shimmering with refractive coatings that blurred their outlines against the void. Human ships. But not as the Empire knew them. The last transmission from the scout drone was fragmented, its final frames showing the human fleet's lead vessel rotating toward the camera. Then static. High Command's war room was silent. Vailitha's mandibles twitched. "Prepare the Doomhammer Squadron." Across the Empire, mobilization orders flashed. But for the first time in centuries, the call to arms carried the faintest tremor of doubt. Humanity wasn't hiding anymore. And the galaxy was about to remember why that was a problem. The Doomhammer battle group tore through the void, its formation pristine, its firepower unmatched. Admiral Vailitha's flagship, the Imperator's Will, led the charge, a 5-kilometer monstrosity of plasma lances and neutron armor. The crew's confidence was absolute. This was not a war. This was pest control. Then the human fleet moved. Not in retreat. Not in panic. But with the precision of a predator circling prey. The Empire's targeting systems flickered. Enemy signatures blurred, shifted, vanished entirely before reappearing kilometers off projected trajectories. The tactical officer aboard the Imperator's Will cursed as his screens glitched. Their propulsion doesn't make sense. No inertial drag, no wake signatures. "It's like they're cheating," Vailith snarled. "Focus fire on the lead vessel." A volley of plasma bolts streaked toward the human flagship, only to detonate harmlessly against a shimmering barrier that hadn't been there a second ago. The Empire's weapons officer paled. "Their shields, they're adapting. In real time." Then the humans fired back. Not with plasma. Not with missiles. But with kinetic rods moving at point 15 C, strikes so fast the Doomhammer's point defense lasers couldn't intercept. Armor meant to withstand supernovae crumpled like foil. The battlecruiser Eternal Flame took a direct hit to its reactor core and vanished in a silent flash. Vailitha's comms exploded with panicked reports. "Engines offline. AI core compromised. They're in our systems. Crew decks breached. Life support failing." The Admiral stared at the holographic feed as another Imperial ship, the Dawnbreaker, listed helplessly, its thrusters dead. A human corvette, tiny by Imperial standards, darted past its hull, deploying some kind of nanite swarm that began dissolving the Dawnbreaker's armor plating like acid. This wasn't a battle. This was dismantlement. Then the UNS Retribution entered the kill zone. It shouldn't have been intimidating. At barely a kilometer long, it was dwarfed by the Imperator's Will. But the way it moved, smooth, unhurried, utterly unbothered by the chaos around it, sent a primal chill through Vailitha's spine. The Retribution's hull shimmered. A crack split down its prow, revealing something that looked less like a weapon and more like a gaping maw. The Imperator's Will's science officer screamed. "Energy spike! Off the charts!" "It's..." The beam that lanced out wasn't plasma. Wasn't laser. It was a stream of magnetized dark matter, a technology the Empire had theorized but never weaponized. The Imperator's S shields held for exactly 1.3 seconds before overloading. The beam carved through the flagship's spine like a scalpel through flesh. Valeth had just enough time to register the Retribution's hull knitting itself back together, self-repairing at a cellular level, before the emergency bulkheads sealed him in darkness. Across the battlefield, the human fleet moved with terrifying synchronicity. Ships that should have been crippled kept fighting. Weapons that should have overheated fired again. And always, the Empire's systems betrayed them. Fire control lagging, engines misfiring, comms broadcasting static. The Doomhammer Squadron, pride of the Imperial Armada, was being erased. A lone escape pod spat from the Imperator's wreckage, its distress beacon blinking. The Retribution ignored it. Let them run. Let them tell the tale. As the pod tumbled toward safe distance, its occupant, a junior gunner who'd somehow survived, watched the human fleet regroup. Watched as their ships, unscarred, untouched, formed up around the Retribution like a pack around its alpha. Then, in perfect unison, they pivoted. Not toward the next Imperial stronghold. Not toward the core worlds. But toward Earth. And the gunner finally understood. This hadn't been a battle. It had been a message. And the Empire had just failed to decode it. The Imperial throne world had not known fear in 12 centuries. Its towering spires gleamed under the light of 3 suns, its orbital defenses untouched by war. The High Council convened in the Hall of Eternal Dominion, their holograms flickering across star systems as they processed the unthinkable. The Doomhammer Squadron was gone. Not defeated. Erased. Emperor Zalthun's claws dug into the armrest of his obsidian throne. Explain how primitives developed dark matter weaponry. The silence that followed was heavier than neutron star core. His war minister, trembling, projected the last transmission from Valeth's escape pod. Grainy footage showed the UNS Retribution firing its impossible weapon, then, more terrifying, its hull healing mid-battle. The science prefect's voice cracked. Their technology doesn't obey known physics. The self-repair systems alone would require molecular level. Enough. Zalthun's roar shook the chamber. Scramble the home fleet. Glass their wretched planet before. Alarms drowned his words. Humanity didn't attack the throne world. They didn't need to. One by one, across 500 star systems, Imperial stations went dark. Not destroyed. Hijacked. The automated shipyards at Zarzais began constructing unfamiliar designs. The quantum comm relays near Kes Prime broadcasted human propaganda in perfect Imperial high speech. Even the palace's own holographic displays flickered, then showed the same looping image, Earth's blue marble, wreathed in fire, with a single phrase beneath it. You should have paid attention. The final blow came from within. Slave races the Empire had oppressed for millennia rose in synchronized revolt. Not with crude weapons, but with human-designed pulse rifles distributed by stealth ships they never saw. The Imperial garrison on Zeta Rigel 7 reported their own combat drones turning against them before going silent. On the agricultural world of Pelion, the subjugated Grathner tore apart their overseers with strength-enhancing implants that hadn't existed a week prior. And always, the reports mentioned the same detail: human operatives were nowhere to be seen. Only their gifts. Their vengeance. Zalthun's last act as Emperor was to activate the Omega Protocol, a dead man's switch meant to collapse every wormhole in Imperial space. The command console rejected his biometrics. A child's voice issued from the throne room speakers, speaking in the dead tongue of Earth's ancient languages. Game over. The holograms dissolved, replaced by a live feed of the UNS Retribution entering high orbit. Not to fire. Not to conquer. To watch. On 1,000 worlds, Imperial banners burned. The last transmission from the crumbling throne world wasn't a plea or a curse, but a question, broadcast on all frequencies as the palace's comm array was dismantled molecule by molecule. What are you? The reply came not from human leaders, but from 100 liberated species, their voices woven into a single transmission. The reckoning you earned. And as the galaxy's oldest empire crumbled to dust, humanity's ships turned their bows toward the stars. Not as conquerors. Not as saviors. but as the warning they'd always been meant to be. The void where Imperial dreadnoughts once ruled now hummed with strange new energies. Not the ordered chaos of conquest, but something far more dangerous. Awakening. On the shattered remains of the Throne World's orbital platforms, Grathner engineers worked alongside human-designed constructor drones. Their tools rebuilt what the Empire had broken, not in its image, but in something entirely new. The first interstellar shipyard of the Free Systems took shape, its architecture fluid, organic, as if grown rather than built. A Grathner foreman ran a claw along its living metal hull. This doesn't obey physics. The human engineer beside him smiled. You're right. It rewrites them. Across former slave worlds, the changes came faster than blood could dry on executioners' blades. On Pelion, where Imperial governors once fed dissenters to fusion furnaces, children assembled quantum cores with the ease of stacking blocks. On Zeta Rigel 7, former torture chambers now housed matter synthesizers, spitting out medical nanites instead of pain. The changes weren't given. They were taught. Humanity's greatest weapon hadn't been the Retribution-S dark matter cannons or adaptive shields. It was the knowledge they'd hidden in plain sight. The Empire had scanned human databases for weapons and found nothing. They'd never thought to check children's educational tablets. The last Imperial holdouts clustered at the galaxy's rim, their warlords screaming of righteous reconquest. They never saw the weapon that ended them. Not a warship. Not a bomb. A song. Broadcast on every frequency from 1,000 stolen transmitters, the melody carried encoded harmonics that unraveled Imperial cybernetics at the molecular level. Their augments, the source of the warrior caste's strength, turned to slurry in their veins. The warlords died confused. Their final transmissions asked why humanity hadn't used this sooner. The answer came from a human communications officer, her voice calm as starlight. We needed you to teach the galaxy what happens to slavers first. On Earth's rebuilt orbital plates, representatives from 73 species gathered. Not to swear fealty. Not to negotiate terms. To learn. The Grathner ambassador touched the data crystal containing humanity's full history. Wars, genocides, the slow climb from self-destruction. You hid this from yourselves too. The human delegate nodded. The Empire saw what we wanted them to see. Savage little apes, squabbling over scraps. She tapped the crystal. We nearly were. Then we remembered something older than stars. Outside the observation deck, the UNS Retribution hung against the black, its hull now woven with organic circuitry from a dozen worlds. Not a warship anymore. A monument. A promise. The ambassador's breath fogged the glass as he whispered the realization. You weaponized redemption. The transmission that left Sol that day carried no threats. No demands. Just coordinates, to dead Empire's ruins, to the graves of civilizations that had chosen chains over change. And a single line, repeating in every known tongue. The lesson is free. The test costs everything. Somewhere in the dark between galaxies, something ancient received the message. And for the first time in 10 million years, it hesitated. The silence after revolution is always the most dangerous. On the edge of known space, where Imperial wreckage still spun in slow, decaying orbits, the first scout ships appeared. Not human. Not Imperial. Not anything the liberated systems recognized. Their hulls were smooth and featureless, their movements precise in ways that made even Grathner neural interfaces ache with dissonance. They scanned the dead battlefields with methodical patience, collecting debris, studying the scars of war. Then they vanished, as suddenly as they'd arrived. No demands. No threats. Just observation. The Council of Free Systems convened in emergency session. Who were they? The Pelion delegate demanded, her frills flaring violet with tension. The human representative, an aging strategist with neural scars from the First War, didn't answer immediately. Instead, he projected data from a millennia-old Earth archive. A single line stood out among the declassified files. Contingency protocol. If they arrive silent, they already know. The Grathner ambassador's claws flexed. You expected this. Not them specifically, the human admitted. Just the pattern. A pattern older than civilization. Older than stars. The quiet before extermination. Deep in the asteroid belts of reclaimed systems, human engineers worked with stolen Imperial fabricators. But they weren't building warships this time. They were building mimics. Hollow shells of warships, identical to the Retribution class, their interiors gutted and filled with something else entirely. The lead engineer, a woman missing 3 fingers to Imperial torture chambers, called them gifts for uninvited guests. Her assistant, a former slave from Zeta Rigel 7, watched as the final mimic was loaded with payloads that defied known physics. Will it work? The engineer activated the sequence. Depends on how curious they really are. The mimics launched, not toward any known system, but to dead zones where the mysterious scouts had been spotted. They drifted, powered down, broadcasting faint distress signals in perfect Imperial battle cant. Bait. The first mimic vanished 12 hours later. Then the second. The third was taken violently, its hull ruptured by weapons that left molecular edge fractures. The fourth allowed itself to be taken. And when the scouts cracked its core open, they found no weapons. No traps. Just a single quantum-entangled particle, vibrating in perfect sync with a matching pair back in human space. A message. A challenge. The free systems waited. Then, a transmission, broadcast on every frequency at once. Not in any known language, but in something deeper. Primal. A series of harmonics that bypassed translation, drilling straight into the hindbrain of every species present. It wasn't words. It was a concept. You play games with forces you do not understand. The human strategist smiled for the first time in years. Good, he said. They're talking. On thousands of worlds, defense grids activated, not to attack, but to broadcast a single unified signal back into the void. The same harmonic. The same concept, but with one addition. Come and learn why we still exist. The galaxy held its breath. Somewhere in the dark, something ancient listened. And for the first time in recorded history, it answered.